quantitative analysis using X-ray spectroscopy is a technique that measures the elemental composition of a sample by detecting the X-rays emissions made by this sample when it is bombarded with an electron beam. However, this technique suffers from matrix effects, which means we need to take into account three kinds of corrections. The first one due to the atomic number, the second one due to the absorption of X-rays inside the sample, and the third one due to fluorescence. Because of these three factors, we call this correction ZAF correction. And there are two ways to perform it. The first one is called the standard procedure, and it relies on making an additional measurement on a sample whose composition we already know, which is called the standard sample. And we're going to use these results to calibrate the measurement on the sample that we are actually interested in, the unknown sample. Of course, these two measurements must be done under the same conditions in the same detector. The second method is called a standardless procedure, and it does not rely on any additional measurements. Instead, it uses a database of reference values made by other detectors. Of course, this is cheaper, faster, and easier, but it usually not meet the precision requirements to do scientific research. In fact, it can reach errors as high as 25% for light materials. Unfortunately, the detector at my university, the EDA-X Pro-Octane detector, uses this second method, for which my project is about building a new protocol to perform ZAF correction based on the standard procedure, for which I have three main outcomes. The first one is a Wolfram algorithm that takes as an input the raw data from the detector. It finds peak values of X-ray intensities, it fits a Gaussian profile into those peaks, and then it calculates the standard deviation among other parameters and performs the ZAF correction using an iterative algorithm that can reduce error below 2%. The second outcome is a database with the standard measurements from the standard samples. In this database, we have varied the energy beam intensity, the incidence angle of the beam, and the distance between the detector and the sample. And finally, we want to publish all our results in our website in a technical document explaining the methodology, the algorithm's mathematical framework, the validation metrics, and the user's protocol. Now, during this process, we have encountered several problems, and one of the biggest ones was the lack of information from the manufacturer. You see, our detector is like a black box. It gives us results, but it doesn't explain the internal calculation that it did to reach this result. For example, the manufacturer documents doesn't explain how to calculate the mass absorption coefficient as a function of the wavelength of X-rays, which is a critical parameter to perform accurate ZAF corrections. To overcome this problem, we took a systematic approach. First, we conducted a review on scientific literature. We identified theoretical models to calculate the missing parameters. And finally, we tested these results, these models, using performing measurements on standard samples in which we already know the composition to validate these models. In conclusion, what we did was to combine theoretical knowledge with empirical data in order to obtain a protocol that is not only more accurate, but it is also transparent and reproducible for others to use.